We all want the best of both. Dessert without calories, luxury without expense. And how about security without passwords? With Okta, it's possible. We secure identity so you can safely use any technology. Okta, the world's identity company.
I'm Yasmin Gagne.
I'm Josh Christensen.
And this is Most Innovative Companies. On today's episode, Zach Kornfeld and Keith Habersberger from the Try Guys on building an audience across multiple platforms.
If we can just take every reality show and do that, but dumb, I think we're carving out a nice niche for ourselves.
Stephanie Smelly of Patreon on how the platform empowers creators.
You can download your CSV file, take it with you if you want to leave. We are not trying to gatekeep your community.
And as always, keeping tabs.
You're a VP of customer success? Congratulations on your position that did not exist 5 years ago.
But first, here's the download. The news you need to know this week in the world of business and innovation.
The Department of Justice has filed an antitrust lawsuit against Visa. The lawsuit alleges that the financial services giant is a monopoly and is using its dominance to stifle competition in the credit card market. They say it has cost consumers and businesses billions of dollars. Do you have a Visa card? Are you a Visa or an Amex girl?
I'm Visa, but I feel like Amex is cooler.
I have an Amex. I do feel cooler.
Right? It just looks better.
It's pretty cool.
Sam Bankman-Fried's former girlfriend and advisor, Caroline Ellison, was sentenced to 2 years in prison for her part in the FTX crypto fraud debacle that put Bankman-Fried away for 25 years. Ellison is a former CEO of Alameda Research, a crypto hedge fund connected to FTX cryptocurrency exchange. It's so funny. Did you hear the judge basically be like, never met a snitch like you. You spilled everything.
Wow. Jesus Christ. Editorialize, won't you, Judge? Isn't that what you want? Criminal justice system?
OpenAI Chief Technology Officer Mira Murati is leaving the company after 6.5 years. Murati is the latest high-level executive to depart the company. Co-founder Ilya Sutskever and former safety leader Jan LeCun announced their departures in May. Another co-founder, John Schulman, left to join the competitor Anthropic.
Dropping like flies. It's Sam Altman's house now. He's the captain now.
Remember when they tried to oust Sam Altman and said he somehow ousted all of them?
Yeah, it's wild. The OpenAI drama over the past year and a half has been really enjoyable to watch, frankly.
Real Housewives of OpenAI.
Real Housewives of OpenAI. Make it, Andy Cohen. Make it. The UN General Assembly met this past week in New York. One of the key stories coming out of that meeting was the adoption of the Pact for the Future, a set of 56 actions to meet the challenges of the 21st century, which we can all assume what those are, right? Rats in New York City, Eric Adams. My qualms are mostly New York City based. Double parking. The pact aims to tackle challenges ranging from climate change to AI to combating inequality and poverty.
What I love about UN pacts is that they always work.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm glad they
famously
did this
an effective organization.
Shares of Nike jumped more than 8% last Thursday after news that Elliott Hill would be replacing John Donahoe as CEO of the company. Elliott Hill is coming back to Nike after retiring from the company in 2020. Hill will also be director of the board in addition to being the new president and CEO. Man, when they pull somebody back out of retirement, you know things are bad. It's like when Bob Iger came back to Disney.
Yeah, it's usually not great. Anyways, and finally, LinkedIn has quietly removed the AI-powered prompt questions that had been appearing under almost every post for the last several months for premium users. I love this story so much. It had been part of a suite of AI-powered enhancement LinkedIn had announced last November. The prompts have tended to be generic and sometimes comical questions that are only vaguely related to the accompanying post. My favorite example is on a post about the kickoff of pumpkin spice season. It asked, quote, "What can I gain from pumpkin spice?" Which, to be honest, is the question I would like answered.
Oh, that's so good. And that's the news you need to know today. So, Josh, do you remember the Golden Age of BuzzFeed video?
Do I? Oh, yeah. No, I do. You remember how many memes there were about pivot to video? I guess memes weren't really a thing back then, but it became such a trend.
And when I was in college, it was like, when I was in college, it was like the future of journalism is multimedia.
Yeah, well, it's like, well, yeah, duh. But like, also, it wasn't necessarily like a pivot to video. Like, everyone's just like, oh, now we're also doing video.
Yeah.
And BuzzFeed was one of the big ones leading that charge. Do you remember the Whine About It videos from BuzzFeed with Matt Bellassai, where he'd just get drunk at his desk?
I listened to Matt Bellassai's podcast, Dis and Tell.
I did as well, which I did also enjoy. I really liked Matt Bellassai and him just like ranting about stuff at his desk, getting drunk. I was like, I want that job. That's what I want my job to be.
That's like what we do on this podcast, but sober.
Yeah, speak for yourself. What about you? Did you have a favorite BuzzFeed video series?
I didn't watch a ton of them, but the tasty videos always got me. They'd cook something great, like they're mesmerizing.
Yeah, the tasty videos were just magic hands making delicious food. I like the tasty videos as well. The reason we're talking about BuzzFeed is because this week I talked to the Try Guys.
The two remaining Try Guys, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And that's something we're going to get into quite a bit. But the two remaining Try Guys are Zach Kornfeld and Keith Habersberger. So, Zach, Keith, welcome to the Most Innovative Companies podcast. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you. The Most Innovative Companies. That can't be us.
No. They're the Most Innovative Companies podcast. And then we are the least innovative company to be featured on the podcast, which is an honor.
You.
Well, I mean, you don't know all the companies that have been. We'll pick our favorites later. Yes. What do you know about the Try Guys?
That one of them cheated on his wife with somebody who worked for them.
Yeah, unfortunately for them, that is how a lot of people learned about them for the first time. For listeners who don't remember, about 2 years ago, the Try Guys went viral when one of the four original Try Guys, Ned Fulmer, was caught having an affair with one of their production company's employees.
And wasn't the idea like he was like really nice and family oriented?
His whole brand was being the wife guy, and his wife was actually on the channel quite a while. They had like a DIY, like kind of home makeover type of show that they did as well, but it really was a mess, and it probably would have stayed in the Try Guys corner of the internet if it wasn't for this apology video that the remaining Try Guys made that went viral.
Ned Fulmer is no longer working with the Try Guys. By now, we're assuming you've seen the Reddit threads and TikToks and tweets and news articles. We want to give you a timeline of what's transpired and some transparency into our decision-making.
So Zach, Keith, and Eugene, who's another one of the original Try Guys, they're on a couch explaining to their fans what happened with Ned, and it basically triggers social media responses all over the place. People are asking, who are the Try Guys? Where did this come from? Even though they're very popular, the thing about YouTube is everyone has their own niche. That's just the reality of it, even though they had 8 million YouTube subscribers. But this blows up so much that it even gets satirized by SNL.
There's a lot of anger on this couch.
Okay, welcome, Try Guys. Yeah, I'm trying to understand why this story is such a scandal. Was this affair non-consensual?
No, worse. He committed the heinous act of having a consensual kiss and not telling us, his friends.
Oh, I totally forgot about this sketch. This was a pretty big one back in the day.
Yeah, it got a lot of attention, clearly riding off of this viral moment. But honestly, I think it's kind of fucked up with SNL. Like, okay, admittedly, the premise, SNL is funny. I laughed at parts of the sketch. But they're making light of someone having an affair with one of their employees, and that's obviously not cool. And the Try Guys did the right thing by removing Ned from the brand, but this has unfortunately become a defining moment for the Try Guys brand and their business.
So why talk to them now? Because that sketch was a while ago.
Yeah, well, that was 2 years ago, which was 8 years into the Try Guys run. And this month, it's actually the Try Guys' 10-year anniversary, which is quite a long time to be making videos.
Yeah.
And on top of that, Zach and Keith have just launched a streaming platform, Second Try, in hopes of building a more sustainable business model. But I had to start by asking them about the Ned Fulmer scandal. It was a seminal moment in their business that had a huge effect and is part of the reason in many ways why they're launching this streaming service. But I asked them if they thought it would be the end of the Try Guys.
Wow, what an opening question. Let's dive right the hell in. Yeah, obviously it was very challenging for us on a personal level, for our staff. Then there were also a lot of eyeballs on our team on the moves we were making in a way we did not expect. It also fundamentally changed the type of videos we were making. But we are super proud of how we got through that and how we led the team through that. That event also showed us how fragile success online is. Digital media is a very, very rare thing to be able to do for 5 years, let alone 10 years. It showed us some of the cracks and some of the fragility that was inherent within our business that we weren't aware of. The first thing that happened is that a ton of brands went away. We were on path to booking our biggest year ever. We were now a hot commodity. So that showed we had an over-reliance on branded work and that things could happen out of our control, whether it is something like this or things happening in the world that suddenly bring that away, and now we can't afford our staff, we can't afford to make the videos we make. It also showed the fragility of relying on algorithms. When that happened, there were hundreds of thousands of people that flooded in to check out the car crash, to see what drama was on our channel. Then those people didn't watch our videos because there was no drama. So now we have this algorithm hiccup where all this traffic comes in, but they're not engaging with our videos, and then they slowly start unsubscribing, and it forgive my language, it fucked up our channel entirely. And so we went through about 1.5 to 2 years where we were just losing subscribers every single month, which told YouTube as a supercomputer, hey, this channel's dying. All of these were cracks in our business that were there, but became fissures, became canyons. And so taking all of that together, we started to think about, what do we care about? What does our audience care about? And is there a better way to do it? I think a challenge that's existed from the beginning is that we make viral videos. That's at least the primordial ooze that we came out of.
And that primordial ooze, otherwise known as BuzzFeed.
Yeah. You understand.
Yeah. By having to continue to chase trends anew year after year, you risk alienating the audience that you've cultivated along the way. But if you only play to your audience, then you're not playing to the algorithm, the already mighty algorithm that feeds your videos and helps your channel grow. There's a real tension there. And so we decided to try and break free from that altogether and focus in on what we care about the most, which is making great shows. And that is what led us ultimately to Second Try.
So before we dive into the streamer, I do want to focus in on how you had built your business to that point, because you talked about this, revealing different fissures that were in there. So let's go back to I guess your second beginning. So 4 years at BuzzFeed, Second Try after all. 4 years at BuzzFeed, tremendously successful. The BuzzFeed machine is pumping out video content, super viral. You guys are one of the top, if not the top, performing videos coming out of there. And there's a lot of stars that have been launched from that point. The people at Watcher, Matt Belisai, super successful as well. And like many others from BuzzFeed, you decide to leave, start your own thing at that point. When you began that business, what were the core principles that you were building that foundation on?
There were lots of parts of our brand that were underexplored. So we had never toured. We could write books. We also just had never made great merchandise, and that's just a great way to make money off of a successful brand. So there were lots of avenues that we felt we couldn't go down within BuzzFeed and would need to do it on our own. And also we, I think, wanted the challenge and a reinvigoration of ourselves to something, right? Because by doing this, it challenged us. It was something new. It was exciting. Can we do this? So we all came together, put in some money, made this company, and it was a big risk, but we knew there could be great reward in it. And we created this very difficult schedule for ourselves of making 2 videos a week, 20-minute, 30-minute, 40-minute, 60-minute videos, 2 of those a week. Lots of different formats and different shows. We started creating new shows, creating different IP within the brand. and seeing a lot of success because we had this great underdog story. We're leaving a big company. We're starting our own thing. And we were making really good stuff, I think. And also, in the way that the algorithm has been not serving us lately, it was really serving us then because we launched a channel that grew rapidly because we were moving an audience over to this new place. So we were actually telling the platform, this is the greatest new brand that's never existed before, and it's getting millions of subscribers so fast. So propel this content up. And so we were, benefited by the very system that is not benefiting us anymore. So we did all those things, had lots of success. And actually, I don't think it was just 2 years ago that things changed. COVID changed everything for everybody, but we are a unscripted show that goes out in the world, meets people, and tries things within their sphere. And COVID locked us all down. So we, at that point, also had to start changing our content. We literally go and meet people and do things with them. And that was the one thing you were really not supposed to do in 2020. So that changed. But we've always had to adapt. And we always have adapted. And I think that's something we've done pretty well.
We don't just have one show, The Try Guys. We have a whole roster of shows. Some of our shows are bigger than The Try Guys at this point. We have Without a Recipe and Eat the Menu. And some of the things we're making for Second Try are more popular by the numbers they get than the actual show, The Try Guys, which is cool because as creators, you have to always reinvent yourself. But there's this push and pull as a digital creator, which is, am I optimizing for width? Or am I optimizing for depth? And the essential job of a digital creator is to always optimize for width. And what I mean by that is capturing as many eyeballs as humanly possible, trying to think about what is going to be served to the most people, get the most clicks, be the most broadly accessible. And then you get to that word content, right? Content is not art. By definition, it is something that flows through you. But when you are trying to have a lasting relationship with an audience, what you do want is depth. And us as creators, we want depth. I don't mean to speak too pretentiously about what we do, but I hope that by making comedy, or dare I even call it art sometimes, by making the things that we make, the videos and the shows and the episodes, we hope to affect people. We want to make things that either make people laugh so much that it helps with a bad day, or to do a try that helps reflect the way that they see the world or the way they hope to see the world, to unlock something about their understanding of themselves. And that depth is often at odds with width. And so when everything happened, we tried to recommit to that idea of depth and say, what shows can we make that will really, really matter to people? And maybe we're not going to be trying to capture the millions of people that we've captured in our heyday, but that's okay. Because if we can get thousands, tens of thousands, if we could even go past that, now maybe there's a model where we can have a stronger business than we did before. And a business that can last over time because we're making things that really matter to people.
You haven't shied away from those maybe sort of deviations from what people would expect to you, the kind of like BuzzFeed clickbait, guys try X, guys try this. I think there was Eugene's music video, coming out music video. Zach, I believe you made a video about disability.
Yeah.
That was incredibly personal.
A short film that premiered at Fantasia Fest this past year, and we're going to be releasing it top of the year.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thanks.
That's, but I think that's always like a tough thing to do, not even just in the YouTube era, but as comedians. Like, how often do we see comedians make a dramatic turn and it sort of gets met with either mocking or praise? I think I saw recently John Mulaney's going to be on Broadway, and that was met with people being like, what's this guy going to do on Broadway?
Interesting. Look, we've always loved the surprise cry. And if you go back to our earliest videos, they are comedy, they are silly, but I do think the best ones have a emotional depth that is surprising. So yeah, this moment I think is a recommitment to what we think we do best and what our audience thinks we do best, and trying to the best of our ability to ignore that buzzy signal of pure numbers. Because numbers will tell you one thing. Views pull you in a direction, but that direction can be separate from your true north. All that matters is reaching people. And so we've had our dalliance with traditional media. We made a TV show, we went on tour, wrote a book, all of those things, but none of those processes have been as deeply satisfying as working with the team here, making a show we love and going right to our audience. And so
I think I'm done doing things for external validation and am instead trying to reinvest in us, myself, each other, and the audience who's been rocking with us for so long.
Yeah. To play devil's advocate for a second, not that anyone needs to play devil's advocate, that's a flawed concept, but at the end of any algorithm, as I undermine myself.
I like even the phrase itself is like, to pretend I'm friends with the devil real quick. What about this alternate idea that the devil might present?
Clearly it's a phrase that when someone starts a question to be a devil's advocate immediately puts them on solid ground.
Yeah.
To use a different phrase that is not invoking the devil, at the end of any algorithm is ultimately a person who needs to make a click. And
for sure,
when you go through such a crisis PR moment as you did, there is obviously probably a certain amount of people in a wide audience who are immediately like, you know what, I'm done. I'm out from the Try Guys. Or there are people who were really attached to Ned, and there's going to be some sign off from there. Not to mention, all of a sudden, you're thrust from your large but niche corner of the internet into monoculture in a really significant way, which people are now going to form opinions about you going forward, which is going to affect your ability to create audience. Have you really grappled with this idea of, can we sustain an audience knowing that we've turned off a lot of people?
Look, I think that there are some people who will say, I liked watching the show when there were 4 guys trying things. Now you do all these different shows, and that's not for me. To which we say, totally valid. That's fair. Also, we've been making things for 10 years. You could love us and consider yourself a fan of us, but you don't watch us anymore. Keith loves The Simpsons. They're in season 30-something. He doesn't watch them anymore, but he's still always going to be a fan.
I love this. I'm a huge fan of The Simpsons, but I don't watch The Simpsons, you know?
It's just an inevitable part of growing. So for us as creators, we have to grow. We have to keep making new things, because some people will say, I want you to stay the same and never change, but that's not true. They'll inevitably fall off. We need to keep trying new things, not to say the magic word, but that is essential. And then what I'm also talking about here with algorithm versus making shows that our audience loves, etc., I'm really just talking about diversifying the way that we monetize, because monetizing entirely just from YouTube and YouTube ad revenue, it forces a type of creation that I think was incongruent with what we did best. We're still really reliant on digital media. YouTube, first of all, is a huge part of our income. We do not want to ever stop that. It's where we find new audiences who then hopefully get endeared to our shows and come in to check out Second Try. It's where we experiment. I mean, it is the majority of our business still, but we also want to unlock a different type of creativity, a different type of storytelling, something that we think we could not do just by only going in on an all YouTube strategy.
I think you can even look at how many YouTube channels are 10 or more years old, because YouTube, the landscape changes every 3 to 4 years. And not only do I mean that by the types of people you see on it, but the actual way the machine works and what kind of content it thinks is best to make money for YouTube changes every 3 to 4 years. So the faces you see are the faces of the creators who are making the stuff that YouTube thinks is going to make it the most money. So when YouTube doesn't think that style of content is going to be what's the most successful, those creators are going to have struggles finding success. But in 3 to 4 years, who knows if it's going to return to 10-minute comedy sketches. I don't think it's going there. But, it's going to change again. And I think as we get older and we think about what we want to do, it's not making content based on what will perform the best, but making the best content that performs in a way that our audience wants to see it produced.
So let's talk about streaming. And Second Try launched this past May. Obviously coincided with Eugene moving on, although I believe he's still going to be a tangential part of your videos and your content going forward. But this feels like intentionally and through a number of circumstances, a really new era for the Try Guys.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why was streaming the right bet to make in this moment to diversify that revenue stream?
Yeah, it's definitely a new era. I mean, and we tried to very intentionally, energetically give it that. We filmed Eugene's farewell season, though he is coming back for our 10-year special that's coming up in a couple weeks. We introduced the expanded cast, and we wanted it to have that feeling of a full chapter break of we are going to be doing things differently. We're going to be making a bunch of different shows, highlighting new voices, making things beyond what we could make with just Keith and I in the starring role. I give a ton of credit. I think in every interview, we like to give a big shout out to Dropout and Sam Reich, the whole team over there. They were people that we looked at as really forging the path for this type of model. And we saw within what they were doing an opportunity for us to do what we do best. We think we're at our best when we're making big shows. I mentioned Without a Recipe earlier. It is a cooking competition show featuring idiots, people who have never baked before, trying to guess what is a pie. And then when it comes time to judging, they're presenting to some of the most accomplished bakers in the world. And usually it ends up with us fighting them and trying to convince them why their very valid critiques are wrong. We almost call it Great British Bake Off, but dumb.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, the niche we're trying to... If we can just take every reality show and do that, but dumb, I think we're carving out a nice niche for ourselves.
So watching the Mexican episode of Great British Bake Off and being like that, they found something in the Mexican
I think they kind of tried to steal a page from our book that day. They're like, hey, you know what? These guys make this Without a Recipe show. What if we made a really dumb choice?
Yeah. I think it was identifying what we were doing the best and the way that we were trying to fit a circle into a square hole by releasing it on YouTube, right? We were optimizing for the wrong things.
And it really seems like a natural evolution to the Patreon model of this sort of super-sized, paywalled premium site. At the same time, streaming is also an uphill battle in a lot of different ways. I mean, you're at the very beginning of this, and you're charging right now $5 a month or $50 for a year going forward on the lower end of streamers, which should help with adoption. What are your main goals and benchmarks in this first year of launching this streamer? Is there a number you're trying to hit?
Sure. I mean, yeah, there are obviously benchmarks and numbers we'd love to hit. And at the end of the day, there is the commerce side of making art. You can't just make stuff because it's cool. You got to pay for all the people that work here and keep giving them raises and get them a nice Christmas bonus and keep the lights on, all of that stuff. But we're also trying to create a more deeply endeared fan base to really prove to our audience, hey, we are investing in this relationship over time, just as we hope you invest in us, and that we are creating the space that, or rather, you are creating the space that you want to see. It's an interesting time to try and get into streaming. Every major streamer seems to be struggling mightily. They've become too bloated. Their prices are too high, both for the consumer and also for what they are spending. So we're trying to stay incredibly nimble. My goal is not to get millions and millions of subscribers. We would take it.
I don't want to.
Stay away, masses. We don't need you.
If there are exactly 1 million people watching right now, you are welcome to come.
We'd love that. We don't expect it.
The overall thesis statement that I hope you take away from us is that we are trying to create sustainably. We want to keep doing this because we love doing this. We have one of the greatest jobs in the world, and being in digital media is fleeting. If you think about the biggest stars that you've covered, just go back 5 years. Some of them aren't making anything anymore, and that's not through any fault of their own. It is because of the ebb and flow of the digital world. And so if we can carve out our own little nook, I don't ever expect, honestly, that Second Try is going to take over our business. But if it can be a stabilizing force, if it can remain 10, 20, 30, 40% of our business, that will help weather the storm from all the shit that's going to come. The ad market is going to change. The algorithms are going to change. All of these things that are out of our control will happen. But if we can have a place where we are directly connecting with our audience and making stuff that they love, that they value, that reflects their values as people, the content they want to see in the world, things that aren't being made anywhere else, all of that stuff, we now stand a chance to be here 5 years from now in a way that I promise you, if we were just doing the playbook the same way, we'd be gone.
Well, yeah, you're right. Most of the original YouTubers who were out there in 2006, 2008, they've either moved on to be Bo Burnham and doing whatever they're doing, or they're making a lot more money from bigger studios. But, what percentage of your business is on streamer versus your other revenue streams? Obviously, when Watcher announced that they would be moving entirely to a streaming platform, they had such a backlash. So you couldn't necessarily just take all of the Try Guys channel videos, drop it on a streamer, and abandon that YouTube audience. It would have
Nor would we want to. I think that's
Yeah.
a really short-sighted strategy, right? We love our digital audience, and it's also how we're going to continue to grow. We see this as a 5-year journey.
We can't just turn off the faucet of our YouTube revenue. We wouldn't be able to afford to do it. Like, it has to be a smooth transition. And rather than say the transition is like, oh, well, eventually I'll take it all off of YouTube. No, I want to slowly convince the audience that this is the place they actually want to be instead of watching on YouTube. I need to make such amazing stuff on Second Try and also show them what's going on Second Try and still give them stuff for free because they've had stuff for free for 10 years. You can't just take that away from them. Also, they are owed the opportunity to keep watching our content the way they always have, because we would not have this job and these amazing shows if they didn't already do their part, which is watch. So I'm sure we could do it a lot of different ways. We talked about a lot of different ways to do it, but found that this was the best for our growth, we think, the best that we could give to our audience that can't afford to come to a subscription model. We still need to keep giving them stuff. And we still need, right now, YouTube as a big platform.
Anything that we had been giving to our audience for free needs to continue that way. To take that away from them would feel really disingenuous. I think it would feel like Lucy pulling the football out from Charlie Brown. But what we can do is we can make new shows, and we can have seasons of shows where we say, hey, here's an episode to a new thing we're making. Isn't it cool? Come on over. We can give you those old shows that you love early. And hopefully over time, we can then build up that catalog where the new shows are really what's pulling people over as opposed to the old. I'll tell you, we're only 3 months into Second Try. We have a lot to learn, but one of our new shows, Escape the Kitchen, which is an escape room where people have to solve riddles and puzzles to get each step of a recipe. It's absolute torture for the people who are being filmed. That is right now 3 of our top 5 watched episodes on Second Try are from that show. One of our other shows, Trolley Problems, which is brand new, I think 5 episodes are in the top 10. So our new stuff is outperforming and outpacing the classic stuff, right? We did a whole 6-episode season of the Try Guys, and that is underrepresented in the top 10 compared to the new things we're making. That's a really promising sign, and for something like this to work, it is going to entirely depend on our ability to prove it.
But is there basically a plan that you're going to be making more new properties for the streamer versus continuing the properties that exist on YouTube and not necessarily adding to that? Essentially what I'm asking is, are you trying to slide in more to the streamer and eventually it's a 80-20 split between streamer and YouTube, between the content that's going on there? Or are you trying to run each as their own 50-50 entity within your business, independent of each other?
Yeah, I mean, let's do this again a year from now and find out what happens. It would not surprise me if in a year or 2 from now, we are releasing less on YouTube, and that's because we're only releasing the best stuff on YouTube. Simultaneously, it also wouldn't surprise me if we think about spinning off a new YouTube channel and having a division of our company that is just focusing on those great formats. Ultimately, we're trying to be led by what excites us creatively, and then from that, what business decisions do we have to make to be responsible?
And we have a lot of ideas for shows, right? And sometimes those ideas turn out to be bad. But, you have lots of ideas. Some ideas we have oh, this is a really good show. I have no good way to package this for YouTube, to give it a good title and thumbnail that really gets you to understand the show within a blink of an eye, so you'll click on it. But it's really good, but it's just not something that I can figure out how to optimize. Well, that's a really good show for Second Try.
Yeah, and I mentioned Escape the Kitchen being the most successful thing we've made on the streamer. It loses money on YouTube. It doesn't get the views and the revenue that justifies the cost of making it. Our audience is saying, we love this, but YouTube's saying, you don't belong here.
At the same time, I might think of a show that's like, wow, this is such a clear YouTube hit. This is exactly what is doing well right now on the internet. I have the ability to make it. Why don't we make that? Let's get that on YouTube because that's going to do well in the YouTube space. It will do well there. So I will put it there. It will also go to second try before it gets to YouTube. But like, not every idea goes to every place.
A lot of the streamers are building in tiered, and this is very much, again, stolen from Patreon, tiered subscriptions going forward. Crunchyroll has multi-tiers. Obviously, like Hulu has multiple tiers going forward. And it seems like it's in the spirit of creating that depth of experience for your audience. Have you thought about experimenting with different tiers that offer different levels of access?
We are trying to keep costs as low as possible for the consumer so that it is just such a no-brainer. The calculus that we're trying to make is if we can make the price as low as feasibly possible, always giving as many discounts throughout the year as we can we get more people who want to stick with us for a longer period of time? And it's also why, like, we are unofficially saying, hey, yeah, share a password with your best friend. If they pay for Hulu and you pay for second try, something tells me that that means that you're going to stick around longer than if you both had to pay for it separately. I get it. Look, there's only so many streaming platforms that I personally want to pay for in a month. Even though I can afford it, I'm still like, Mom, please give me your Disney Plus login. I just can't. There's that psychological hurdle. So we're trying to be realistic about it.
Let's talk a little bit more about the content you have coming up because obviously with the streamer, with the YouTube channel, with Eugene moving on, you have introduced a lot of new personalities. And initially you might think, oh, we need to fill these 2 holes and be 4 guys trying things. But you very much did not do that.
Yeah.
And you are launching a new series with Ash Perez. You are featuring more content from Kwesi James, Johnny Cakes, a number of other personalities over there. What are you most excited about in this coming slate of shows? And what can you divulge about what's coming up?
As the Try Guys, we have always loved telling stories about people's passions and identities. We did that through a very specific lens for the first 8 to 9 years. But there's a limiting factor there. And there is this wealth of comedy and storytelling and emotion that we can tap into by yielding the floor and bringing in our new talented friends. With Ash, we were out to dinner. We were talking about he recently transitioned and talking about how there was no media about that sort of second puberty, how it is funny and messy and silly. And there's obviously a lack of transmedia in general, but also a lack of stuff that has a lightheartedness and a humor to it. And it was thinking about, from his perspective, what is the show that I would want to see? We both slurped our noodles and went, wait a second, we can do that. And that is, I think, the opportunity that is being afforded to us right now on YouTube. Every single video would have to have our big 2 dumb faces in the thumbnail if we want to give it a chance to succeed. And instead, we now have this audience who has entrusted us, and we can say, here is something that we think you're really going to love that is based on everything we do. It has some of the same DNA, but is moving in its own specific, unique direction. So his show is one that we are immensely excited for, but it also is incredibly meaningful the way that so many of our friends are now trusting us and our editors and our team to highlight their stories. And we love working with them. And it's been a real honor to give them that platform.
I like to think of success as often talent and skill plus opportunity. We had talent and skill, and we had an amazing opportunity. And we have had so many opportunities. We've been able to flourish, honestly, more opportunities than maybe our talent even merited. But I know lots of talented people. And it's our turn to give those people opportunities.
And also just filming videos with the same group forever, the dynamic becomes stale. And by having all of these new friends to play, it's almost like new toys to play with. All of these new people, it's made it so much more fun for us. We had a stale dorm room and we ripped open the window and opened the door and...
New semester.
Classes are
starting.
Thank you for a very graphic description of what that's
You
like.
can almost smell it, I bet. Right?
Yeah, I can. It's mold. And must.
I was talking to your executive producer, Rachel, a couple days ago, and she was talking about how one of your trivia formats you literally couldn't do because you knew there was nothing new to learn about each other between the two of you. So having a new set of people, you can all of a sudden do trivia and personal trivia again around things.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I've been doing this podcast with my co-host Yaz for a couple years now, and just a couple years in, I'm just like, you told that story before on the show.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, yeah.
we can't keep telling the same stories again. In terms of class within the entertainment industry, there's not really a robust creator middle class. There's either wildly successful or people doing it for the love of the game. And Dropout and I think Smosh to an extent, and Rhett and Link even with Mythical, you guys represent a creator middle class. And this industry isn't good at sustaining or supporting that middle class. Do you think about that a lot in terms of your place in trying to maintain this in a way where you can make stuff that is niche, but sustainable, and you're able to give people salaries and give people health insurance? What responsibility do you feel to maintain that?
Yeah, all those companies that you mentioned are companies that we are great friends with. I think something that's really unique and special about this media middle class, as you say, is that we're all very friendly and trying to help each other succeed. Those are all companies that we look at with great reverence.
I'm very proud of us that we're in the same sentence as them. But you're right. We have an obligation not only to make things for our fans, but run a company that has people. And there's people in this company who have families. And certainly when everything got blown up, a big concern of ours was stability and how do we keep this going.
I have one very selfish goal, which is to make stuff I love for as long as possible. I said it before earlier. I just love making stuff. It's so fun to collaborate with Keith, but also all the people here, Rachel being one of them. And so the strategy that we have to do that for as long as possible is to be, I guess, good bosses. I want people to not want to leave. I want them to be paid as well as possible, to have healthcare, to have 401ks, all of those things, because I don't want to lose anyone here. I want to continue to build on that rapport. I think the more that we get to grow together, the stronger we ultimately are. So yeah, we feel a great responsibility towards the staff that we have because they've brought us this far. And I also think that they are the key to our longevity and success.
10 years from now, what do you hope the Try Guys looks like? What do you hope your company looks like?
I guess I hope that in 10 years, we're continually doing things that are exciting. I think what I've said this summer is I hope that the thing we're most known for hasn't happened yet, because that means I've got lots of cool things to do, lots of things to discover.
I hate to be so on the nose, but I do hope that we never stop trying. We want to continually experiment and create new things. And so, 10 years from now, I hope that it is almost unrecognizable to us because that means that we will have experimented and followed those experiments and learned and grown. We hope to create the baseline from which we can explore all of our creative endeavors, whatever those might look like.
Well, I think that's a great note to end it on. Zach, Keith, I'm a fan. I'll be watching. Good luck with the new season. And thanks for talking to me.
Thank you. Thank you for the time.
We're going to take a quick break, followed by our interview with Stephanie Smelly, Head of Business Development at Patreon.
We all want the best of both. Dessert without calories, luxury without expense, and how about security without passwords? With Okta, it's possible. We secure identity for your business, so you can safely use any technology. You can build experiences that are richer and more secure, grow revenue without running up costs, and scale easily, no matter your tech stack. Enjoying the best of both? It's possible. It's Okta. Okta, the world's identity company.
Stephanie Smelly is Patreon's head of business development. Patreon basically helps creators make money outside of selling ads. Last week, we sat down with her at our Innovation Festival to chat about how the podcast landscape has changed and how Patreon stands apart from other platforms. I started by asking about how Patreon works with podcasters in particular. Some of that was for personal interest, but also I wanted to ask because podcasters actually make up many of Patreon's creators.
The podcast space is growing rapidly. And a lot of podcasts benefit off platform on social media from the scale and getting ad dollars and brand sponsorships. But as that space gets more and more saturated, it's getting harder and harder for them to succeed in that way. And that's where Patreon comes in, because we provide that platform where podcasters can come to have creative freedom of expression. They're not beholden to fighting the algorithms on social media platforms. So that's one reason why they come to Patreon.
Podcasting obviously goes through these ebbs and flows of CPMs, how much you're making in advertising. So the allure of a Patreon is really strong. At the same time, I think with these subscriber models, we see almost like a little bell curve dip where there's a lot of people making a lot of money and then very few making that sort of middle class money and then a lot making like a few hundred a month. Is there a discoverability play that Patreon is considering or working towards that helps build that kind of creator middle class?
Interesting you say that, because we made an announcement about our Explore page and Discover tool. So that will, and we do not want to become an algorithmic platform. However, we want to enable fans like myself to discover new podcasts. And that's by way of recommendation. So creators saying, hey, I like listening to this podcaster. Maybe you would like these 5 podcasters too. That provides more of like a trusted recommendation versus just a big machine telling you what to listen to.
When you're talking to creators, say, who are just starting out or who just want to build a bigger community, what is some of the advice you're giving them? Sell t-shirts.
You can have millions of fans, but if you have 1,000 true fans and you can charge them $100 each, you can build a sustainable salary for yourself. And so it's not about casting your net super wide and hoping that everything sticks. It's really leaning into that bottom of funnel audience who really follows you wherever you go, gets the merch, gets the live tickets, and writing comments under your posts. Those are the fans that you should lean to and look to build your business with. And so as part of the Fast Company Fast Track, we hosted a renowned podcaster named Yowei Shaw at our company a couple days ago, and I had the pleasure of interviewing her. She has an emotion investigative journalism podcast. And so it's like digging into why people have emotions and really like looking at that as like true crime and asking people questions. It's amazing. It's called Proxy, by the way.
I wonder what a FOIA request for an emotional
But to my point that she was talking about how she might put 10 minutes of her podcast on the regular platforms like Apple and Spotify, but she put a whole director's cut of like 60 minutes or more on Patreon.
I love the idea of putting your edited stuff on Spotify and your full unedited draft on Patreon.
And she wasn't sure.
Works.
Yeah, she
People
wasn't sure what people like it. And she leveraged our community chat tool to ask, like, is this what you guys want? And it was a resounding yes. And it's because those top fans, they want to hear more. They want to hear the raw, uncut version. They want to hear her swear. They want her to say politically incorrect things that the algorithms might push to the back because it doesn't fit whatever their goals are. But she's able to do it on her terms with the freedom, and her fans will pay that monthly membership every week to hear that.
Yes, I don't think our listeners want to hear our uncut moments.
Oh my God, the way we would get fired. I'm curious, so our listeners understand, do you take a cut of the Patreon fee? Is that basically how it works?
Yeah, our motto is, when you make money, we make money. And if you want to leverage our free tier, which has taken off exponentially, we launched at the beginning of the year and we're over 30 million fans in that tier. But if that's all you want to do, that's fine too. We won't take anything. And so we're working with you at your own pace.
Right.
But we take a small cut from membership
What's
fees.
the percentage cut?
It's 8 to 12%. And then of our shops and digital commerce, we take 5%. So it's still a small fraction, especially based on the number of tools that we offer. But we are committed to creator sustainability. And if you don't make money, we don't make money. And if you succeed, we succeed.
Who are the podcasters or creators on Patreon who have the most rabid fan base? You must know. You have access to this kind of thing.
Rhymes with.
I know.
Yeah.
Honestly, we have one of our bigger podcasters, Joe Button, does really well. And he's been a leader in the podcast space. Shannon Beveridge does really well on our platform. The Girls Bathroom is another podcast that does well.
Another trend in podcasting that's continued is the acquisition of some of these bigger podcasters. Are you worried about that? I'm thinking of Smartless. These podcasts getting big deals from the major players, Spotify, Sirius. Are you worried about that buying out maybe some of your big fish?
So we don't look at ourselves equivalent to all of those platforms who are just acquiring top podcasts because we can work alongside them.
They could have a Patreon in addition.
Correct. And they can diversify their streams of income that way. And part of my work is actually working with podcast networks, podcast publishers, because they're signing a lot of top podcasts and we want them to have a home on Patreon as well. And so we're actively building network level tools so that a network can come on Patreon and manage all of their shows at the business level and look at their fan sentiment happening in conversations and community chats across all of their shows and get data and insights across all of that and be able to assign a manager to moderate the content across all of their roster. And so I'm in big conversations with a lot of top networks so we can evolve with the landscape and also be a home from a business level and an individual creator level.
What kind of analytics do you provide creators with?
It ranges. We provide them, obviously, with their listener data. One of the biggest draws of Patreon is we let you own your audience. So you have email addresses, you have names. It's not like the third-party social media platforms where it goes into a dark hole and you're like, I don't know who my fans are. The magic is you can download your CSV file, take it with you if you want to leave. We are not trying to gatekeep your community. We allow you to own that, and we provide a lot of data around their listener behavior on the platform as well.
Which has been a huge issue for podcast growth overall is that Apple and Spotify, it's a little bit better now in some third-party like Chartables and some of those other tracking sites. But data in the podcast space is fucking terrible. Like, it just is.
But we do not want to get into the business of becoming transactional with our customer data and selling it off. Like that takes away from the ethos of why we exist. And it's for creators to not be beholden to brands and algorithms. And so people are now looking at podcast hosts the same way we grew up listening to our radio hosts. And they're our best friends in our car on the way to school and work. And you build this intimate relationship with them where you're like, I know this person. I know about their family. And so podcasts that lean into those relationships do extremely well because it's like, I'm loyal to you. You're my imaginary friend. And now it doesn't have to be imaginary anymore because of those tools that we've developed, like community chats where you can say, that really resonated with me. We're also seeing fans connect with each other. That's also exciting to watch, too, because it unlocks new opportunities for us to enable podcast hosts and fans alike to meet IRL and take it off platform into the real world.
When someone is in the Patreon ecosystem, how many Patreons are they generally a part of?
It varies. I would say 1.5, 2.
Yeah, okay, so not too many. Now, what do you listen to? What Patreons are you subscribed?
Well, one of my favorite creators is Kid Fury on The Read. They have Hot Topics. They have a Black Excellence segment. They have a mailbag segment where they answer questions. They're also obsessed with Beyonce like I am, so it's a lot of Beyonce tidbits. But I listen to them regularly. I listened to them way before their Patreon existed. And even before I got this role, I always heard them directing to Patreon to engage with more content, get discounts to their live shows, that type of thing. And I was like, duh, this makes so much sense. I listen to them every week. Why wouldn't I feel like I should be rewarded more for my loyalty? And that's really what it's about. Kev on Stage is another one. He's a comedian, and we actually did a live event with him a couple months ago that enabled him to hire 5 up-and-coming Black female comedians have a kind of comedy special focusing on these new women who may not have gotten the platform otherwise. And he decided to put it solely on Patreon, made a comedy special selling for $5 on his Patreon where people could just buy the special. Awesome. He literally broke records on our platform of how well it did. It sold out immediately. And I love how we leveraged his success that he's already had on Patreon, the fan base that he grew, to then support him in bringing up the next up-and-coming emerging comedians.
Well, this was great. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Okay, it's time to wrap up the show with Keeping Tabs. As a reminder, this is where each one of us shares a story, trend, or piece of pop culture we're following right now. And this week, it's just me and Josh. So, Josh, what are you keeping tabs on?
We are so lonely. This week, I'm keeping tabs on John Mulaney. No, not the new child he had with Olivia Munn. I'm talking about the gig he had at Dreamforce, the Salesforce conference in San Francisco. Did you see this, Yas?
Yes. Oh my God. It was awesome.
He just laid into these techies at this conference in a really satisfying way. Honestly, I know some of you who listen to this podcast are probably among that crowd of people, but I think we all need to take the piss out of ourselves a little bit at time. Some of my favorite quotes from John Mulaney were this one. In front of the crowd, he says, "You look like a group who looked at the self-checkout counters at CVS and thought, this is the future." Another one that I liked is, "Can AI sit there in a fleece vest? Can AI not go to events and spend all day at a bar?" Oh my God. There was another one that I'm forgetting that was so good.
Isn't it like the fact that you are all called innovators or whatever could not devalue the term more?
Oh, this is another good one I like. "You're a VP of customer success? Congratulations on your position that did not exist 5 years ago." Oh my God. Some of the vaguest language ever devised has been used here in the last 3 days. The fact that there are 45,000, quote, trailblazers here couldn't devalue the title anymore. Wow. Really,
I have to respect it.
I respect it. That's John Mulaney just getting paid like $2 million probably to go give a set at this conference and then just like laying into everyone is kind of iconic.
Yeah, I agree.
What about you, Yas? What are you keeping tabs on?
So I don't watch Dancing with the Stars.
You don't?
But I do I know. But I do approve of the fact that they often cast criminals. And the latest one on this season
it's like criminals, athletes, and bachelorettes. That's basically their casting
That's exactly
pool.
it. So the latest criminal who was cast on this season was Anna Delvey. My favorite kind of criminal, because kind of like John Mulaney's thing, like she only stole from rich people. You know what I mean? Like she wasn't like, it's not like Jen Shah taking people's retirement money vibes.
Or Brett Favre, like whatever he did with welfare, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's super messed up. It was kind of messed up that when she was cast, she received special permission from ICE to compete under the condition that she would wear her ankle monitor, which they did bedazzle for her opening number.
Oh my God.
But unfortunately, her opening number was her last because she was eliminated. And after she was eliminated, Julianne Hough, the presenter, asked her what she was taking from her experience on the show.
What are you going to take away from this competition? Nothing. There you have it.
And that's it for Most Innovative Companies. Our show is produced by Avery Miles and Blake Odom, editing by Julia Shu, mix and sound design by Nicholas Torres, and our executive producer is Josh Christensen. Remember again to subscribe, rate, and review, and we will see you next week.